Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig on this fine Friday morning. For those of you who don't know, I'm Craig, and this is my coffee. And in the event that I am in need of additional coffee, that's my other coffee over there. So please make it a point to like and share this video feed. You guys are going to really, I think, enjoy today's conversation. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Whatever you got to do to get plugged in to us here, please get plugged in and get your friends plugged in. Anyway, so today we're going to be doing a little bit of a legislative update. I'm sure that you guys have been paying attention to what's been going on in Washington, D.C. lately, as we have, which, honestly and kind of sadly lately seems to be nothing, which is a little frustrating when you consider the fact that we have Republican majorities in both the House and the Senate, and we have a Republican president who said that, hey, the Second Amendment was really important to him. So with that, we now have an opportunity to get kind of an update as to what is currently taking place and what we can expect, at least from the rest of this legislative year and legislative session in Washington, D.C. And to share that with you, we have my good friend, coworker, and compatriot, fellow, how shall we say, the dude that's in the trenches with you and me. We have my good friend, Mr. Phil Watson. Phil, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing, Craig?
I'm doing quite well, man. Keeping busy here in California, as I'm sure you can guess. And now, for those of you who don't know, Phil is also our lobbyist in Washington State and Oregon, and things have slowed down there a little bit, haven't they, my friend?
Yeah, absolutely. The legislative sessions in Washington and Oregon are both over, and we're turning at least my attention right now towards Washington, D.C. again.
Right. So now tell us a little bit about what is currently going on in Washington, D.C. I mean, you've been there for a little bit now. To give us an idea of exactly how things are going over there.
Well, it's a bit of a sticky situation, really, because the razor-thin margin in the Senate is affecting legislation that the House passes over to the Senate. There's a lot of bills that are being sent over to the U.S. Senate that are going there simply to die because of that razor-thin margin. It's currently a 51 to 49 difference, and the senator from Mississippi just stepped down. They're in the process of replacing him. He's a Republican, and also John McCain right now isn't even in the U.S. Senate. He's back in Arizona receiving medical care. So that margin is slim to none right now in the Senate, and it's really just a battle of procedure right now in the U.S. Senate, where they're just doing things like quorum calls and stuff like that just to pass the time. So right now, most of the things are on hold. At least until a few other things can happen. So right now, everything's on the House to pass things over to the Senate, and it's a waiting game at this point. So everything that we can do right now to help that process and institute some pokes and prods in our some of the wishy-washy senators and congressmen will definitely help push the process along. And there's also some creative legislative and procedural ideas that we can do to possibly move the process along as well. So some of these things are complicated, some of them aren't. And I guess we can expand on that in the conversation here today.
So tell me so here's the frustrating part. So we're hearing people say that they're pro-Second Amendment, and we're hearing a lot of this, we're hearing that things can move. And from what you're telling me is there are some things that can be done. But first of all, what are some of those things? And what is the real impact that some of those things can have that we can do? And then who should we be focusing our attention on?
Well, first of all, I think we shouldn't ignore either side of the of the legislative spectrum, I think we have to keep pressure on both the House and the Senate. So if you've got some free time, if your members have some free time, definitely keep contacting your senators and your congressmen, because some of them think that, well, since some things have died or some things have passed, that the fight's over for this year and we're just waiting for the election. Well, there's a lot of time between here and the election, and we've also got a lame duck session between now and the end of the year. So there's a lot that can be done, and a lot to encourage right now. So we've still got a lot of things on the table that can be done for pro-Second Amendment legislation, pro-self-defense legislation, and also for stopping bad legislation from getting through. So not only writing your congressman or emailing is great, but also following up with a phone call is excellent as well. And having previously worked in this building before as a press secretary intern, I can tell you that every single member tracks and files every single contact that they get. So you can get as many calls as you want or as many emails as you want, but if you're not contacting the right person, for example, your senator or your congressman, and telling them, look, I live in the district, here's who I am, and I think you should support this legislation and support legislation that supports the Second Amendment. If you're not calling your specific congressman or your specific senators and emailing them, then you're not getting the full effect of your contacts. And I can tell you that they do track it absolutely 100%.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. So here's what we deal with, and I'll give you an example. My representative is Doris Matsui. Yeah, Doris Matsui. My senators are Dianne Feinstein and Kamala Harris. Exactly. So you're starting to see where I'm going here. So what is it that someone like me can do? Because I know that yes, I am going to call them. Yes, I am going to email them. Yes, I am going to write them. But I also know that my pleas are going to fall on deaf ears. What's something that I can do in order to have a difference or make a difference?
Well, there's several things. Number one, it's not necessarily that it falls on deaf ears. They track the overall they track the overall contacts, for example, in every single state and overall from what they're hearing. And the leadership can determine, and they can say, okay, well, I'm getting a lot of contacts more than normal. And even if you live in a deep blue state, if more people have contacted overall than normal in a year or in a certain time span, then they definitely look at it and say, wow, this is not the norm. And they look at overall trends like that too, and they can track that stuff, and they do. And so their leadership on both sides of the aisle track that. And even if you're in a deep blue state or a deep blue district or a swing district, it still counts when you call in. And even though your individual member may not end up siding with you, it doesn't mean that doesn't have an effect overall of what their overall caucus may be thinking or doing at one point in time. This is definitely strategic and cumulative. So we can definitely have an impact on a grassroots level if people definitely are contacting and doing those things, and also definitely sharing on social media, getting the word out with your show and people like that, and definitely donating so we have the time to put in with people like that, like you and me, in the state capitals and in the U.S. Capitol as well. So those are the different things on a grassroots level, and there procedurally there's also a lot of stuff that we can do as well.
Okay, so let's dig into just to get a couple of real quick details. So right now, concealed carry reciprocity for the most part is not going to move, right?
It's probably not going to move unless there's an overwhelming pressure to have a vote on it, not only again in the House, but again in the Senate. As you know, the House already passed it, and it's simply waiting in the Senate. Part of what the House passed in the concealed carry bill, of course, was the fixed NICS bill that got passed with the omnibus. So now, go ahead.
Just real quick. So now that was actually the next question. So fixed NICS. I'm assuming that one, because the only version that's really passed is with concealed carry reciprocity in the Senate. So I'm assuming fixed NICS dead for this year.
Well, fixed NICS, they're probably, because it was passed with the omnibus, they're probably not going to tinker with it any more than they already have. So fixed NICS, as it's attached to HR 38, HR 38 is probably dead as we know it right now, because they're not. The House sent a letter over with, I think, 40 or 50 members saying we're not voting on this again, so don't send this back. So we are right now, HR 38 specifically is probably dead. But that doesn't mean the House can't vote on another concealed carry reciprocity bill and send it over to the Senate and say, hey, Senate, do your job.
Vote on this clean concealed carry reciprocity.
Yeah, here's a clean bill. Vote on it and do your job, guys.
All right. So now one of the things that we've been following, and it's been a national movement, well, actually two things that we've been following that have been seem to be national movements. One is gun violence restraining orders or extreme risk protection orders. What are the chances of something like that creeping up there in Washington?
Right now, there's rumors of one of the bills, possibly multiple of them, different versions being amended or possibly even going to the floor. Right now, those are just rumors. I think some of the leadership on both sides would not like that to happen simply because these hearings, these gun confiscation hearings are ex parte, legalese for secret meetings that you don't get to attend and submit evidence to as somebody who's accused. So right now that's still pretty controversial, but also there's some members pushing pretty hard for that. So it's right now it's a little bit up in the air, but I would say 60-40 against it coming to the floor. But that's why it's important to contact your congressman and contact your senators. Reassure them that you're not budging on your stance, and that groups like the Firearms Policy Coalition are out there, and we're watching them every single day what they're doing. And there's certain things that we can do as well with me walking the halls here to really dive down into the details and tell why we oppose this legislation, and that's what I've been doing here this week.
Okay, now one other thing, the ending of or the proposals to make it so that those adults, legal, lawful adults, 18 to 20, would not be able to purchase long guns. Is that something that looks like it's going to see any life in Washington, D.C.?
Again, like with the gun confiscation bills, it's something that people want to talk about here, but it's something that people are hesitant to bring to the floor, sort of like the concealed carry bill in the Senate, because nobody wants to have a vote on something here and be a loser. So it's one of those things where people are constantly lobbying here for it or against it, and offices are constantly lobbying each other for it or against it. Hey, co-sponsor this bill, let's vote on it. No, we don't want to vote on that. Don't do it. We want you to vote on pro-gun legislation. So it's one of those fights that we need to have both with me here and with you guys back home there, telling your congressmen and senators, yes on this bill, no on that bill, and I'm not going to budge.
See, now you guys are getting it, and this is the thing I'm hoping that folks, those of you who are watching, are getting from what we're hearing here today. And it's that we have to keep up the pressure, because if there is enough political pressure from the other side, you may wind up getting something that is going to actually take away or restrict our constitutional right to keep and bear arms. At the same time, if there is enough pressure from our side, you may actually get a vote on something that is actually going to advance or protect our constitutional right to keep and bear arms. The point being is that the other side is not quitting. They haven't rolled, they haven't rolled over and played. They're not rolling over. They're not playing dead. They're still fighting, and so it's incumbent upon us to still be engaged and still be a part of the fight. Am I pretty much paraphrasing it right, Phil?
Oh, absolutely right. Just because the media has rolled over and has gone almost completely, 90 to 100% against the Second Amendment doesn't mean that every voter in the country is going to vote that way. And that's what you need to relay to your senators and your congressmen is just because the media out there thinks something doesn't mean that's necessarily the policy that the voters want and that the voters are going to reward at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, we still have rights in this country. We still have elections, and we still do things. We still do things the right way, and not just what the media says or what the media wants or what one billionaire wants to do. So that's the message that we need to keep relaying to our congressmen and our senators, because honestly, if we don't, some of them freak out and they get scared and they want to run and hide and just sit under their desk all day and wait it out until the next election. So we can't let that happen.
Exactly. Pro-gun people, Republicans and those Democrats who claim to be pro-gun, you ain't got to be scared. We got your back. All right. All you got to do is stand up for our civil rights, and we'll stand up for you. And it's important, folks, that we make sure that we let them know that we're watching all across the fruited plains. We are keeping an eye on y'all. Anyway, Phil, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And thank you guys for joining us for Coffee with Craig. You guys know, look, Firearms Policy Coalition, we are the home in the fight for civil rights. We thank you for liking and sharing each and every one of these videos and plugging your friends in so that they can come to know exactly where the battle is taking place. You folks have a good, fun, safe weekend, and remember, stay free.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.